Welcome to this presentation on what is NGN. The intent behind this presentation is to give a broad overview of the changes coming to the NCLEX next spring. The learning objectives are to identify key details about NCSBN's NCLEX changes, distinguish a case study set from a case study standalone, apply the clinical judgment measurement model to an unfolding case study set, recognize scoring methods on the NGN item types, identify the variety of question types on the NCLEX. Why did the NCSBN decide to change the current format of the NCLEX? Through extensive research, it was determined that there was a gap between educational preparation and real-life practice of novice nurses. Data shows that 50% of errors involve novice nurses. 65% of these errors were attributed to poor clinical decision-making. This begged the question, is the NCLEX measuring clinical judgment effectively? The traditional NCLEX questions that we currently see on the test are indirectly measuring clinical judgment. These questions measure critical thinking. You are given information that represents a moment in time and asked to prioritize. Nurses need critical thinking in order to make strong clinical judgment decisions. The NCSBN wanted to know how to take it one step further and directly measure clinical judgment. They found that questions that put the nurse at the bedside using a case study and electronic medical record information more closely will mimic real-life RN decision-making and clinical judgment. What changes and when will this happen? Starting April 2023, both the RN and the PN will have a new updated format. This format includes 85 to 150 questions with a 5-hour maximum time. There will be 15 experimental questions in the first 85 questions, which do not count for or against the nurse taking the exam. The new case study format mimics real practice and decision-making. With case studies, there's now an opportunity for partial scoring. Scoring will now incorporate 3 methodologies. The first is plus-minus scoring rule. Earn 1 point for each correct selection, forfeit 1 point for each incorrect selection. An example would be a SATA question. Bonus here is that you can never go negative and have a score less than 0. The second methodology is 0-1 scoring rule. Earn 1 point for a correct response, earn 0 points for an incorrect response. No partial credit is given here. Example, the 4-option multiple choice. The third methodology is rationale scoring rule. This type of scoring is used on questions that have a cause and effect paired relationship. Earn full credit when elements of a linked pair of concepts are correct. An example would be a drag and drop rationale. The client is at risk for developing a certain condition, you would drag in there, due to, and then you would drag in the sign and symptom. Think of this new format as the 80-20 rule. 80% of the NCLEX will be traditional questions that students are currently receiving. 20% of the NCLEX will contain questions using the new case study format. Case studies can be attached to a variety of question types and are either associated with a set of questions or a single question. A set is a case study that is attached to 6 questions, which is where the word set comes from. A standalone is a case study that is attached to 1 question. A set is 6 questions that relate to an unfolding case study. The body of information, stimulus, or scenario will be presented in electronic health record format, followed by 6 related questions. Each question will test an important element of clinical judgment. Sets only will occur in the first 85 questions. Everyone will receive 3 scored sets in the first 85. The test taker will receive 1 set in the first third, 1 set in the second third, and 1 set in the last third of those first 85 questions. Now, however, please remember that the test taker will also receive those 15 experimental questions in the first 85. Those experimental questions are unscored questions. The 6 questions in a set follow the NCSBN clinical judgment measurement model. Question 1 is always about recognizing cues, identifying if something is concerning or not expected. Question 2 is always about analyzing cues. What could it be? Question 3 is always about prioritizing hypothesis. What is most likely happening, or what should I be concerned about? Question 4 is always about generating solutions. I need a plan to address what I have identified. Question 5, always about taking action, implementing interventions from my plan. Question 6 is always about evaluating outcomes. Is the client better? Is further teaching needed? In other words, the first 3 questions are all about thinking and processing. And the last 3 questions are all about doing. Walking through these 6 cognitive levels represent what we do as nurses every time we care for a patient. This is clinical judgment. On the screen, you will see now an example of a question from a set. On the left is the case study with the nurse's note tab open. You may have one tab or multiple tabs. For example, another tab could have lab results. On the right is the question. Now let's look at a standalone. A standalone is a case study with only one question attached to it. The screen will say case study screen 1 of 1. Standalones will always be either a bow tie type question or trend type question. Let's look at a bow tie and trend item type. A bow tie question is easy to recognize as it's shaped as a bow tie. A bow tie is a standalone question that presents a case study attached to one question. Interestingly, you'll start in the middle of the bow tie and then solve the left and then the right-hand side. A trend question is also standalone. There will be a case study attached to one question. Any type of question except bow tie can be used as a trend question. The key is that tabs and tables will need to be reviewed in order to determine the trend so that a student can answer the question focused on what's going on or what should the nurse do. To learn more about specific question types, look for these up-and-coming presentations.